Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a walkthrough of a single page application for a vanilla JavaScript front end and a Rails backend, as I would do it. We're going to start with the backend, so that's what we'll be probably doing for the majority, if not all of this video. And also, will not be a very rehearsed process. We're going to see a lot of mistakes and a lot of troubleshooting. So get ready for that. But I do want to go over a few things before we jump into it. Primarily, when we make a front end and back end that are separated, like we're going to do today with the Rails back end and a JavaScript front end, we have to decide how we want to maintain a user session and allow authentication and authorization. So the two main choices that we can go back and forth between are cookies, like we have been doing with just a standard Rails app, or JSON web tokens, which we have not yet done. We're going to do the latter today because we've done so much with cookies and it's not as hard to set up cookies. So I'm going to let you guys, if you decide to go that route, I'm going to let you guys figure that out, and we'll talk briefly about the right path to go down. But we're going to do the JWT route today, and I think it'll be good to take a look at it, and it's very commonly used. And so before we start, let's talk about the pros and cons of each. So cookies, which we have been using, are built in to Rails and thus easier to use, and especially easier to use safely. Even when used correctly, cookies have arguably better security than JWT, JSON Web Tokens. And but they both have their own challenges. So with JSON Web Tokens, it's you have to make sure you're not allowing cross-site scripting, and they're vulnerable depending on where you store them. Particularly, people tend to store them in local storage, which is not secure. It should have no sensitive data stored there. And with cookies, the issue that we're going to have to overcome is CSRF, so cross-site request forgery protection, maintaining that. So we would have to, so when we had just a Rails application, Rails kind of took care of putting that authenticity token there for us, and it was pretty much invisible to us. As long as we made strong parameters, we were all good to go. But if you go the cookies route, you're going to have to manually grab that from the server for all your post requests and deletes and patches, etc. So those are the two. And then another hardship with JWT obviously is going to be the fact that it's not native to Ruby. So we're going to have to use some gems to get it set up, which is why I'm going to go through it today. All right, so yeah, let's just get started with a cookies overview. So if you do happen to go using cookies, I want to kind of give you a path forward for that. And I'll post these some of these references, but I'll go ahead and just give you a quick view of what kind of things you should be looking at if you're going the cookies route. One specific resource I saw that looked good was this website, this article specifically, and it goes through using Rails session cookies for API auth. So this is exactly what you would be doing. Obviously not using Vue or Vue or however you pronounce it, but you would be having a Rails API backend, which is exactly what you're going to be doing, right? So the only really big difference between this article and what you'd be doing is that he's using Axios API to make requests rather than fetch. So anything you do with Axios, you can do with fetch. So not that big of a deal, but something to be aware of. But he goes through kind of the big differences between cookies and JSON web tokens, and then he talks about how to set up cookies with an API in Rails. So it's pretty good. So this would be something that you'd want to use. And again, I will post the link at some point, and if you can't find it, just ask me, and or I'll just flag it to you. So one big thing to be aware of if you are going to use cookies with an API, you got to make sure that you specifically for the fetch API, and this probably won't be in here because he's not using fetch, but alongside of headers and data, method, all that stuff that you put inside of your JSON or inside of your fetch request, you need to make sure you say credentials : include. So this is a quick, let's just do this. This is a quick little show and tell. So if I was like fetching, so I'll do the whole thing then. Const res equals await fetch, and I get my URL, pretend that's defined, and I was doing a method of post and headers of, okay, let's get rid of this weird box. Okay, headers of accept application JSON, and God, can we please not do that? Content type, again, application JSON, and then of course the body JSON.stringify, whatever the body. Then of course this would be defined elsewhere as a JSON object or a JavaScript object. And then so what you would have to say is then credentials include. Okay, so that would be what tells Fetch to go ahead and send the cookies in your browser along with the fetch request. So that would be essential at that point. Let's see what else. You can get the cookies with JavaScript. Well, it'll be saved in your browser, right? So that they'll be sent kind of, as long as you have credentials include those to be sent. But if for some reason you need to get a hold of them in JavaScript, you can say, whoa, that's not it. You would say, if you have your const res, that was defined as your await to your fetch, you would say res dot, okay, do what I tell you to do. Headers dot get, and then you can get your set cookie, which would be the header that gets sent by the server to set the cookie. So you could get a hold of that with JavaScript if you needed to. Shouldn't need to. And then the last thing that I'll copy and paste over here is in your application controller in Rails. This is going to look weird because I'm in a JS instead of a Ruby. Here, let's just fix that real quick. All right. So in your Rails application, you would need to make sure that because you're inheriting from API, you got to make sure that you're sending cookies, and you have this request forgery protection. All right, so that would be the big things to be aware of. You would have to manually grab your CSRF token from the backend, but that site that I was just showing you, it shows you a way to do that. All right, so you can send it with the cookies, and then grab it with JavaScript, or it'll just get sent with the request. But you probably need to add it to your fetch. Let's see, what else? Let's see. Okay, yeah. So one more thing I can show you is as a resource. Again, I'll post this link as well. But my final project, when I was I used cookies as authentication with my React project. So you could use this as a reference. You go into my HTTP request folder and my API manager.js. Now this is with object-oriented JavaScript, which you will learn shortly if you haven't gotten there already. But you can just see that you can use this as a reference. As you can see, I use credentials include, and that's pretty much the big thing that I do to make that work. Let's see, I don't think anything in headers. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. And get headers. Let's see if that. Okay. Yep. Nothing about cookies in there. Yeah. So it's pretty much just credentials include, and then having your backend send the cookies over. But feel free to use this as a reference, and definitely use this as a reference. And that should be good. All right, so let's move on to what we're going to be doing today, which is JSON Web Tokens for auth. So we're going to look at some sites you guys should read to become familiar, especially with the drawbacks with them. This is a good site. Again, all of these will be posted. It goes through what JSON Web Tokens are. Basically, they are they're signed data, encrypted data that can be used for authentication. And what you would do is with every request, when you signed in, you would get your JSON Web Token, just kind of like you would get a session ID using cookies. And then you can make your fetch request with that JSON Web Token in the fetch request as a header, and the backend will be able to correlate that JSON Web Token with you as a user. Now, the JWT not only stores, it can store more than just like the fact that you are you. You know, the way that the session ID just stores your session ID and then everything else can be stored in the database. But the JSON Web Token can store more information, well, I don't know. I guess you could do that in session too, like your whole card or something like that. But a cookie, basically, the cookie size is way more limited than the JSON Web Token size. So you could you can include a lot more information there, so that makes them a little bit more flexible. And the other big uptick for JSON Web Tokens is that you can use a backend that uses JWTs for authentication. You can use it for a web app or a mobile app. So if you use cookies, you have to only use it's only a web app, right? You can go do it on your browser, like on your phone, but you couldn't use it for like an actual mobile app. While if you use JWTs, you can legit use that for a iPhone or Android app. So that's one of the nice things about JSON Web Tokens. So here's a little informational, like overall, you should probably read this. It's not super long. You should read that, understand how it works if you decide to go this route. And the actual gem we're going to be using today, JWT. So it's basically Devise, but using JSON Web Tokens. And I know you guys probably don't like Devise. Some of you guys tried to use it last time and it didn't go super well. So hopefully we'll be able to work through it today and get you off and running with an example here. So yeah, so this is important that you read the whole README. So the big thing, one thing I do want to say, right, when we're using these different gems to make a app, you know, in the real world, I guess it would be more common for you to not write all your own code. It would be more common for you to, well, I guess depending on your what industry you're in, but in general, for web development, and you'd probably be using a lot of gems, a lot of external libraries. So being able to parse through this documentation and figure out how to make it work is really important. Obviously, not just the documentation, but looking at other people's blogs and stuff. But I'll say looking at other people's blogs is dangerous because some people are dumb and say stupid things, which is one thing I ran into when I was making the prototype for this. The blog was very messed up, and I found that just coming to the documentation and using that directly was a lot easier. So I'll try to point those out when I can when we're setting this up today, but I did want to say that. Let's see, is there anything else we want to talk about? No, so we're pretty much going to work through this, and actually let's see if I can get the blog post that I use that isn't very good. So I'll say devise JWT Rails. All right, I think it was this one. So we'll take a look at what these say, and I'll show you what's wrong about some of the stuff here and kind of the process of working your way through the docs and making it work. All right, so not only will I show you step to step actually what to do, but also show you any hurdles that I had if I remember them. And hopefully that will also be helpful when you inevitably have to go out and use different gems for your project. So one more thing I want to say before we dive in. Devise covers authentication. And if you remember the difference between authentication and authorization, authentication is what's proving that you are you, while authorization is, you know, once you are proven to be you, what are you allowed to see, right? So Devise is authentication. So if you wanted to use authorization, you can use a gem called and very commonly used for authorization. And we're not going to use it today. I considered it, but one, I think we're spending enough time getting other gems working with Devise, and then two, the amount of authorization we need for this app is just not at the level of what this would provide for us. So it'd be a lot of setup for really minimal usage. So we're just going to write our own authorizations, literally like 2 methods and an extra class. So that'll take 2 seconds. So we're going to do that ourselves, but I do want you to know that it's out there. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you want more authorization, you can use this. It looks like it's relatively simple to set up, again, if you're able to parse through the documentation, which is an important skill. So let's get right into it. We are going to follow this, and we're going to take a look at this too and kind of try to make this work. So the first thing we're going to do is our Rails new for an API. okay? Um, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do it right in here. I'm going to remove that file we just made because it's not necessary. So I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to put the front end and the back end here. So I'm going to say make dir, we're going to do dog walker app, by the way. So I'll say dog. Actually, I'll just make the director for the front end because the back end is going to be made for us. So I'll say dog walker front end. All right. And then I'm going to say Rails new dog walker backend API. Okay. And we're actually going to do some specs today too. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I think specs are going to be more important now than they have been in the past because you can't really just hop in the browser and test as easily as before. You can and do some fetch requests and stuff, but it's not as easy. So I think some backend tests will be beneficial. Now, definitely not a necessity, so don't feel like you have to, but yeah. Cool. So that's going to get started up. And the next thing we want to do is alter our gem file. So I'm going to actually cd into Dogwalker backend. What is happening? All right, cd into Dogwalker backend. Oh my goodness. Give me a break. All right, there we go. Oh my, what is happening? All right, cool. Third time's the charm. Now I'm going to just type it out because this, okay. Apparently, my ZSH is just not, oh my goodness. All right. Oh, I'm in Dogwalker backend. That's why. All right, cool. Let's clear all that embarrassing stuff and keep working. Okay, so I'm in my backend. Here's my Rails app. All right, and now I want to look at the docs, right? So I'll keep this open over to the side, move this over here. And we want to add this gem to the gem file. So I'm going to go to gem file. I'm going to say gem devise JWT, and I'm going to say gem instead of git. All right. And one thing I'm going to do too, because I know we're going to need it, is say gem of .env Rails, because we're going to need some environment variables. And for that one, I'm going to say groups development test. All right, cool. And then along with that, again, if you didn't know how to use that, it's as simple as just going in here and saying .env Rails gem. Oops, it should be this one actually. And then you can look at the documentation. Actually, let's go to the home page. I think that should be the GitHub page. There we go. All right, so gem.enrails, right? So you put that in. This will tell you what to do. As you see, you need to install it with bundle install, and then with where are we? It should be one for Rails usage. Okay, here we go. Add your application configuration to your .env files at the root of your project. So that means I need to say touch.env in the root of my project, which is where I'm at. And then I will be able to set my keys like this. So I'll keep this tab open for when I need it. I know I will. But for now, let's go ahead and just bundle install. All right, cool. So we're going to bundle install, get our device JWT and our .env Rails, and we're going to go back to this documentation. We're going to kind of hip hop between, that wasn't the right word. We're going to kind of go back and forth between this little crappy article here and the documentation. So, first you need to configure a device to work in an API application. You can follow the instructions on this project wiki page. All right, so we'll take a look at that. All right, so this is the problem with docs. Parsing through this is doable for sure, but it doesn't seem to be like a clear, like do this and then do this and do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the information on these two pages in conjunction with this. Ooh, nice. All right, so we're going to do that in conjunction with this walkthrough here, and we're going to see that using the two together is pretty helpful. So So we made our API, all right? And this talks a little bit about JWT, the gem. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So here we say after we get the gem in, we need to install Devise as usual, right? So if we've never done Devise before, it's important to follow that. So we're going to open up this Devise, the actual Devise page, and we're going to follow these instructions. Okay. So obviously we did Devise JWT instead of Devise. We installed. Now we're going to have to start doing these things. All right. So let me just check over here and see if there's anything that tells us to do that here. I think this is all just like, this is all just granted that you do the normal setup. See, that's what's tough about the docs is sometimes they leave out common sense stuff because they think it's common sense, but it isn't always, right? So let's see if we have anything telling us how to, yeah, there's nothing really saying how to set up Devise. So this is kind of given that we know how to set up Devise. So that's why, again, this is a nice for like a kind of roadmap thing. And then the things this gets wrong, the documentation can tell us how to do right. So we're going to now follow the advice of this blog to set up Devise, which is going to be told us how to do it in these docs. All right, so looks like we need to say Rails generate Devise install. Okay, so we're going to say that here. So I'm going to say Rails G because G is generate, Devise install. Okay. So if you guys do decide to use cookies, you definitely don't have to use Devise. Okay, you can definitely just do the standard auth that we've done in the past. Anyway, all right, so the thing about Devise is that you have to really read everything so you know what's going on, or else you're going to get lost really quick. So setup you have to do manually if you haven't yet. Ensure you have a defined default URL options in your environment files. All right. So here's an example of default URL options appropriate for development environment. All right. So we're going to go to our config environments development.rb, just like it tells us to. All right. And we're going to put in this line of code, config.action mailer default URL options. Make sure it's not there already. All right, it's not. So we'll put that there. All right. And then we're not going to worry about production yet, but in production, the host wouldn't be local hosts, obviously. So it'd be the similar, except whatever port and whatever your actual host is. All right. We don't need to do anything, or let's go to 2 instead of 3 next. So should you have define a root URL? Okay. So we can just put this in our routes. So config routes.rb. We need to define this just like it tells us to. All right, cool. We don't need to do anything with Flash messages because it's an API, and we don't need anything with views because it's an API. All right. So the next thing we have to do, all right, so it says at this point, number of instructions appear in the console, among these instructions, set up the year, blah, 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 blah. All right. It's imperative that you take a look at it, where it is the generator will install initializer, which describes all of Devise configuration options. All right, so this is really important, guys. So you want to go into your initializers and look at Devise, and you really do want to read this whole thing. It's kind of long and annoying. We're not going to change anything right now because we're not using a mailer right now, but these options, they're what let you keep your app flexible to implement things in the future, like restoration of password, email authentication, and stuff like that. So we're not going to change anything right now, but we really do want to make sure that we read all of this so we know what's capable, and then if we get an error, we kind of know where to look if it's relates to these things. So it's important to go through, like they do a good job of having all these really long comments that tell you what's going on. So make sure that you really do read through those. let's see if there's anything that I did that we want to do now. It looks like I uncommented these. So one thing it's unclear about, it says like the default value is email, and then there's this like this commented outline of code that sets it to email. So it's unclear of whether or not like if it's default because like that's what it says, and so you have to uncomment it, or if it's default like if you don't uncomment it, that's what it is. I'm pretty sure it's the latter, where if I didn't uncomment it, that would be the default. I was gonna uncomment that one because that's what I did last time, and I don't want to have to troubleshoot things I didn't have to troubleshoot before. So I'm gonna save that, and then it looks like I did something on line 21. Okay, no, I didn't change that. I actually commented that out. So I'm gonna comment out this because we're not doing anything with mailing. And then I think that's it, except for line 91. Looks like 91, I added params auth. And I think that's because it said to do that in one of these here. Again, I don't want to like go through, like I do want to streamline this, but I kind of want to go through so you can see like what the necessary things are to look at. But again, I'm trying to balance between like you sitting here watching me read versus getting shit done. So we're just going to do that for now. It might not even be necessary, but we're just going to do that. So it's in there somewhere. So make sure, but when you guys are doing this, make sure you're reading through all this stuff, right? I've shown you now what you need to look at. Make sure you're reading through these, and it takes a long time, but once you get going, it'll be worth it because you won't be drowning in a swamp of despair. All right, cool. So what do we do next? So let's take a look at this documentation. So we got some setup stuff here. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm doing that at some point. Some model configuration, but we haven't really made a model yet. So it looks like it doesn't tell us how to do that. So that looks like it's more like just devise stuff. So we're going to go over to this to use this as a, or sorry, to this one, which use this as a way to get started up. So this is where I see, okay, so I've looked at my initializer, and then I will now make a model, which will be the people that will log in, right? So so we're not going to use user, right? We're actually going to make the dog walker app that we started before and other examples where it has an owner, a walker, dogs, and walks. So we're going to make it for now where just the owner are the one that logged in and they can search for walkers and hire them and stuff. But it is important to note that devise does give us the ability with more of these model generations to actually allow multiple logins with more than just a user, right? So we could in the future change our walker model to also have these devise to have this to be this devise model, which then would allow us to log in from either or. But obviously, for the sake of simplicity and time now, we're just going to log in with the owner. All right. All right. So we're going to run this line here. All right. We're going to say Rails G devise owner. Now we're going to actually also append the extra stuff we want in the owner. So we're also going to add name and address, which will both be strings. But so we're going to get all the devise stuff and then also name and address, which will be strings. So we're going to say enter for that. All right. So we're going to take a look at what we just got. And we got all this stuff. Okay. So we got email encrypted password, which is kind of like password digest, except it's Devise's version of that. We're not going to worry about any of this trackable, confirmable, lockable stuff right now, but it is nice to know that we can do it in the future. We're going to keep this for now, but we're probably not going to use it. We're not going to use these indices, but notice we do have our name and address there, which is nice. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. And now we're going to, let's go ahead and make some other models. So you should restart your application after, okay. So then this looks like this is like the getting started. So this is the getting started part. This is just now how to use some of the helpers. All right, cool. So we have some helpers here and telling us the route thing we already did, showing us some before actions we have, and configuring models, which we're going to get to later, and strong parameters, which we're going to get to later. So it looks like there's something else we need to do now. We can probably go hop back over to our walkthrough here and see what they're doing, and just making sure we're ticking off all these boxes in both of these pages as we go. All right, so we've install devise with those instructions, and now we want to, we've made our user, which we called owner instead of user, and we want to include these things into the user. Now, this is where one of the first mistakes is made by this person making this. So we're gonna do that and take a look at where in the docs we can find out what's going wrong. So before we get to that though, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make another resource. So I'm gonna say Rails G resource dog. So if we have owners, we probably need dogs because dogs belong to an owner. So I'm gonna give a dog, it's gonna have a name, it's gonna have a walk time in integer of minutes, notes, which will be a text, breed, which will be a string, and owner, which it belongs to. All right, so let's run that. Get our dog, perfect. All right, so now what we're gonna do is take this advice here to set up our user, but for us it's gonna be the owner. But one thing we're gonna notice is that is we actually, okay, so so unfortunately it's not super clear in the docs here because in the example configuration actually looks very similar to what he has here, which is probably why he has that. But we're gonna have to add, in order to get the sign up routes that we wanna implement later, we actually need more than what they have there. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So we're gonna go over to our our model for our owner. All right, sweet. So we have, we wanna change this. All right, and we want it to be database authenticatable, which was there before, registerable, which was not here, but we need to have because that's what allows us to register the user. And then we're going to give a revocation strategy. Now, we're not going to include these other things here. Okay, so yeah, so that's again, that's just something that you would find this out by messing with the sorry, I'm gonna get my indentations better. Once you started messing with routes, you would notice that you didn't have, when you ran Rails routes, you didn't have any sign up routes. And that's when you would have to go back to the, sorry, my headphones keep turning off, go back to the docs and be able to figure out that, hey, you know, I don't have this registerable, which allows me to sign up. So cool, so we got that all good to go. And now what we're gonna do is, if you notice, we have this revocation strategy that we need to set up. Okay, and if we look at the docs, okay, so he shows us how to do it, but he doesn't really say what it does. So we're gonna head back over here to our devise JWT, and we're gonna look at our revocation strategies and see what's going on. So basically, here we go. So here we go, revocation strategies. So basically what this does is when we sign out, we want to blacklist the JSON web token that was being used so that it cannot be used to get access again, right? So we're going to have to make a blacklist table that can hold that, and it needs to have these parameters, and we're going to notice that the docs save us here because if we look here, we don't have a, actually, we don't need that, disregard. Oh, here we go, yeah, we don't have the date time in our blacklist given to us by the author of this post here. So that's where the docs can come in and save us again. So that's why we're using both. So in order to use this blacklist, we're going to follow his instructions and then modify them appropriately to make it work, right? So we're going to say Rails G model JWT blacklist, and then it's going to have a JTI as a string. And then we're going to JTI string, and we're going to manually add all the other stuff that we need to make it look right. And we have an error that I was not expecting. So let's see what happened. Uninitialized constant owner. Huh? Let's see what's going on. All right. Uninitialized constant owner. Owner.rb. Devise. Let's check our database real quick. Owners. dogs belongs to owner. Where would that come from? Dog walker backend app models owner RB10. Initialize constant owner. Oh, owner JWT blacklist. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So that's just saying that that class doesn't exist, and we know that. So let's go ahead and just comment that out for a second so we can get this model going on. Oh my goodness, I might have to pause this and figure it out and then tell you what happened so you don't have to watch me troubleshoot. All right, models, RB43, no method error. All right, what is happening? Because I definitely did this and it was just fine. You know what? Let's go ahead and just comment this whole thing out, put back what we were just given, and see if that helps us. All right, do I have my, did that happen to go through by any chance? No, I only have 2 migrations. Rails G model, JWT blacklist, JTI string. That should be fine. All right, yeah, okay. So when you run that, I guess we want to make sure that we keep this there before so we're not getting any weird errors, and then we run it. Cool. So we'll do it that way. Perfect. And now that it's done complaining, we can probably do this and get this back. Sweet. Okay, cool. Troubleshooting, right? That was just so again, like some of those errors with devise, you're just kind of like, what is happening? So the best way to do it is just try to read the error. We saw that there is a no JWT blacklist for owner. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna comment that out, put back what they gave me, and see if that works, and it did. So a lot of the troubleshooting is kind of like that, unfortunately. So anyway, so create JWT blacklists. So one thing that we're seeing is the table name wants to be JWT blacklist. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete the S here and rename this to be blacklist since we're directly specifying the table name. We probably could keep it blacklists as long as you put an S there, but just for the sake of consistency with the docs, and let's see what this is here. Yeah, this is also blacklist singular. So I'm going to just keep it singular just to remain the same as the doc. So I changed the file name to be singular, I changed the class name to be singular, and I changed that to be singular, as well as made sure that my model, I was referencing the singular thing. And there's our class of JWT blacklist. Now, the way that they do it in the docs is they let's see. Okay, yeah. So they have this blacklist inheritance application record. They include this, and let's see if this matches what the guy says in his thing here. So it does. All right, so that's exactly the same right here is what I'm looking at, and that's exactly the same as this. So we're just going to copy that in here. Okay, so that completes our blacklist. And again, this is just in charge of keeping track of the people that have signed out, so we don't let them sign back in with that JSON web token. And that's important just to maintain security on our application. All right, cool. So that's good to go. Let's make sure our that this has everything we need it to have, right? So again, so we said string JTI, and we're going to say null false here, just like the docs say, and we're going to give it a date time. Okay. And we're going to get rid of these timestamps because they're not in the docs, and we're going to give an add index at the bottom here. And we're going to make sure too, all right, so notice that the add index is after the end of the create table. So we're going to go here, add index there, save that file. We're going to make sure that looks similar to this, and it does, except it doesn't, he missed that one line that we added in there, and that actually will cause errors later on, so it's good that we are checking both. And we already did this from the docs as well. So the last thing we want to do is place our initializers. So we're going to copy this over. But we're actually going to, yeah, that's going to be good. So we're going to copy this over, and we're going to compare it to this as well, right? So we saw this earlier at the top, I believe. Yeah, here we go. So device setup do config, and this is in our initializer. So we're going to go into our initializer for devise, all right? And we're going to go to the, oh, Nope, sorry. Wait, is that where we want to go? Yes, yes, we do want to go here. We're going to go down to the bottom, and we're going to put this in there. All right, and so notice that, we're setting our secret. Okay, we're doing that here. And then we're going to do these other things that this guy is telling us to do here. So dispatch requests. All right, so it looks like, so this is configuring our revocation strategy here. And it looks like we have an expiration time of 1 day with the JSON web tokens. So that looks like it's good, but again, don't trust everything. You would want to check to make sure that you saw something like that in the revocation strategy. It doesn't look like it says anything, so you'd want to do some digging on that, but we're not going to do that today for the sake of time, obviously. But anyway, so we're going to keep moving on. So here's our configuration here, all right? And we have login and logout endpoints. All right, so it says we want to set our .env, right? So we already added our .env gem. It looks like we're using an environment variable here. So going back over to the .env usage, we just want to set it like this in our .env file. So I'm going to go to that file, and it's going to be devise JWT secret key. It's going to be the key. And then it says the value for that needs to be, if we run, where is it? Rake secret. We should get a nice secret thing. So I'll say rake secret. And we get a nice long secret code as soon as it's done running. All right, cool. There it is. I'm going to copy this AI over. I'm going to put it in here, in our .env file, save that. All right, cool. So now we should have our environment variable being successfully sent and being able to use right here. And of course, in production, we'd set that manually in the cloud. Okay, so, and let's see. It says, while we are here, let's tell devise we do not use navigational formats by adding the same line of the file. Okay, so we'll add that to this right here. So we're going to use that out. Sorry about that. We're going to need to put that outside of this because we're not using the JWT. We're using config. So I'm going to save this, and cool. And that says it will prevent flash messages, right? So we don't need to have flash messages. So cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make some a session controller that overrides devise sessions controller, and a registrations controller that overrides registration controller. And here he makes a huge mistake in the registration controller we're going to have to fix. So stand by for that, but let's get started right now. And that isn't really fixed by the docs. That's kind of fixed by common sense and by testing. So I'll kind of talk about what I saw and what I did to fix it. All right, so let's set our routes up. All right, so we're gonna copy this over, and we're gonna go to our routes.rb. All right, and we're in our routes. We're gonna say devise for users, okay, and we're gonna get our path names. All right, one thing I do want to point out real quick is I'm not namespacing the API right now, like API, v1, etc. You should do that. If I have time, I'll go back and refactor it, but for the sake of time and functionality, we're not gonna do that. That wouldn't be affected by login and logout anyway. So but for everything else, we probably should. And again, if we have time, I'll go back and do that, but something to be aware of. And I've done it in my previous videos. So there is a way to look back at other videos and see how to do that. So anyway, yep. So we have sign in and sign out is log in and log out, registration sign up. And that's kind of the key hint to why we need to be registrable right here, because otherwise you won't see sign up in your path, and you're like, well, registration, and you look up here and be like, well, registratable was a thing. And then actually another thing that's good to know, if you come down here and look at all these responses, there are a lot of people complaining, so it's good to look through those too in walkthroughs to see what other people what issues other people had and how they solved them. But again, sorry not to get too off track, but that's not always a good thing to rely on because it can lead to security holes and such. The main thing you want to rely on is the documentation. So, all right, cool. So we have our revocation strategy. We set up our routes, right? Okay, so that looks good. And we're sending these controllers. And so now we're going to override those controllers to give us some nice JSON responses. not sure how necessary this is, but I didn't try it without them. So it might be worth seeing what happens if you don't override these controllers. But I'm going to set them up and then show you the big issue with overriding, specifically with this one, and what he did not do that really screws you over, and how we're going to fix it. Okay, so so let's go ahead and let's get started on that. So we're going to and this respond to JSON, right? So that's something that we've seen already. If we go to right here, right? So responding to JSON, in order for device to know it can respond to JSON format, you need to instruct the controller layer, and you do it in the application controller respond to JSON. Let's check our application controller actually. No, that's not application controller. All right, so let's go ahead and put it there as well. All right, cool. Sweet. And that's again something that's not in here, but it's in the docs. All right, so what we're going to say here now is we're going to say touch app controllers sessions controller.rb. All right, and so this one, you'll see that we're not really overriding too much. We're going to say class session controller. It's going to inherit from devise sessions controller. All right, we're going to respond to JSON, and then we're going to add some private methods. Respond with resource ops equals an empty hash, and that's going to render JSON resource. All right, and then we're going to say respond to on destroy head no content. All right, so this isn't really overriding too much. Like, we're getting everything in the sessions controller except for the fact that we're saying respond to JSON, and we're responding with JSON here, so it's specifying a JSON response, and that no content on the destroy. So it's really not doing too much here that's bad, but we're going to see in a second what is bad. So we already did our routes. We kind of jumped a little bit, so that's done. And now we're going to take a look at the overwriting of our registration and see what's going on. Let's see if we miss anything here. All right, yeah, so we don't want to go to users sign in, or for our case, owners sign in, right? So instead we change it to login, log out, sign up. I like that better, so cool. All right, so now we're going to say touch app controllers registration controller. Now, the reason he did this, if I could guess, is that he wanted to use this little custom render resource method that he puts in his application controller that just checks to see if there are errors in it. And if there are, it renders this nice little error thing. But what he doesn't take into account is that he's overriding the whole create method. So if you were to do what he did, you're overwriting everything they do in create. And one of the really important things that this does in create is it builds your JSON web token, and upon registration, it sends it to you. So using this little class and overriding the create method, we're no longer sending out a JSON web token when you sign up, which is kind of defeats the purpose of implementing them. So I'm going to show you what we can do to fix his mistake and still be able to use these nice little JSON renderers and make everything have a happy ending. So we're going to go ahead and say class registration controller. Oh, registrations controller. And it might be better. I hate copy and pasting, but honestly, sometimes it really does stop those pesky spelling errors that can cause a lot of time wasted. So in cases like this, copy and pasting is not the worst thing in the world. Now, I'm not going to do it still, but don't feel bad if you do. Okay, cool. So so this is what he does. Actually, let's go ahead and so actually, no, you can see what he does. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do instead. Build resource. So that's probably something the actual create method does, right? Actually create something. So really what I don't know how to do is I don't know how to generate a JSON web token and send it out. That's what they do, right? And I don't want to do the research to figure out how to do that. But I know that the actual create method does that, and it probably builds the resource too. So the only thing he's really doing is using this little render resource thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, one thing that also too can happen is that unfortunately, the create from the devise registrations controller doesn't work, or sorry, the save from that, I think they do save exclamation point, which throws an error. So their create's actually dangerous in the fact that if they do have errors, we're not going to be able to get the errors here because it's going to throw an exception and we're going to hop out of it. So what we want to do is we want to actually do a begin rescue. And I'm going to have two different things that I rescue. So I'm going to do two rescue blocks and an end. And in begin, I'm going to say super. All right, so basically I'm going to call devises create, right? So that means I'm going to build the resource, let devise build the resource for me, and I'm going to let devise make the JSON web token and send it out for me. But if there is an error saving it, I want to rescue two different things. So I'll rescue an active record invalid error. And I'm also going to rescue an active record not unique error. All right, so there are these two errors that can get thrown from this super, and I want to be able to handle both of them. Now, if nothing bad happens, then I'm good. But if we have this error, I want to make sure I render those errors. So the render resource we're going to write later, we can see that actually checks if there are errors, and if so, it renders this validation error method, which renders this nice little pre-made validation error for us. So I'm going to say, okay, so it turns out that the record invalid error will actually have that record inside of it. So I'm going to say render resource e.record, okay? And this is something that I just figured out on my own, so it's not intuitive, but trust me on this one. So basically, if there's an error, this will e.record will have .errors in it, and this will work just fine. It'll get sent to the validation error. If it's a record not unique, I actually don't get the record, and the record won't have .error, so I got to do something else. So what I'm going to do is I want to, okay, this is a little bit, little magic. Oh no, magic doesn't exist. Oh my God, my headset's freaking out. Okay, so I say magic doesn't exist and it shuts off on me. That should tell me something. But anyway, so a little bit of ninja work here. Basically, I want to be able to use this validation error. The problem is it uses resources.errors. So I need some object that has errors. Well, luckily, Ruby has this thing called an open struct, which takes a hash and turns it into something like in JavaScript where instead of like calling errors, I can call .errors. So basically what I'm going to do is make this little fake object that has a .errors in it, and now I'll be able to use this validation error method. So I'm going to say error equals open struct, new, and I'm going to say errors colon user already exists. Okay, so now I have an errors .errors, which is going to be a hash that says user already exists, and that hash is going to be detail user colon already exists will be what gets rendered here, and that'll be turned into JSON by that line there. So now all I have to do is call validation error, pass in that little open struct I made, and now it works. Perfect. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go to my application controller, and I might actually copy and paste this time. So I'm going to go to my application controller, and I'm going to actually just copy these two helper methods over. So let's get that. Oh no, I hate copying and pasting. Ugh, that was the worst. All right, okay. So let's fix the come on. Let's fix the indentation. Another terrible thing about copying and pasting is the indentation's always wrong. Okay, cool. So I have my render resource and validation error, which I use in my other two. Now they will work. And now let's go ahead and actually go back and start making some of our other models that we need, and take a break from this whole thing over here. And notice how much I'm doing right now without testing. And it's really hard to test at this point. So this is why specs, which actually he does cover on now, his specs are all messed up. So we're gonna fix those. But I do want to cover like how these specs are important, right? So all right, so we're probably gonna go another half an hour, guys, and then call it for now. I don't think we're gonna finish the back end, but hopefully enough to get devise up and running at the very least. All right, so Okay, let's say Rails G resource, and we had walkers last time, and they're not zombies, they're dog walkers. We're gonna have a name, they're gonna have a rate, which is a float, which is a per hour rate, and a bio, which is gonna be text. I'm also gonna say, once that gets done, don't throw an error on me, please. Come on. Let's go. Oh my goodness, you gotta be kidding me. All right, more troubleshooting practice. Uninitialized constant user. Where is that coming from? Let's check it. Walker name. Oh, okay. I see. Okay, so it's probably something I copied and pasted. Always a bad idea to copy and paste, or maybe I wrote something. So basically, anytime we have user, no, that shouldn't be it though. Let's see. See, our user is actually an owner, right? So anytime that we say user over here, we want to be saying owner over here. That's probably what went wrong. Active reflector. Here, let's see if we can find something that actually tells us where this is. Nope. Okay. Resource walkers name initialize constant user name errors in constant git. Constantize. Okay. All right. So I must be saying user somewhere. So let's see what we got here. Let's just look through here. Let me take that out and see if that's, I don't think that's it, but that's one thing I added here just now that I didn't have before. So let's just check that. And I'm guessing that's not going to be the case. So I'm going to put it back in the second this fails. Okay, yeah, this failed. And so let's put that back in. We got to find out where I said user. Let's check our routes. There we go. Owners. All right, that should work. All right, sweet. And we can take out this device for owners there. Perfect. Let's redo our resource. I bet you that was it. There we go. All right. Whew. Okay. Nice. Good job, guys. Good teamwork. All right. So now where are we at? We did that. Okay. So we got our walkers up and running, and now we want to say Rails G resource walk. This gonna have a dog belongs to, and a walker that belongs to, and we're also gonna have a time. This is the date time. All right. Let's resource that. All right, cool. And now I think we're ready to migrate. Let's go ahead and check that out real quick. We have our database. So we have our owners, dogs. Okay, where are the two things I just did? You gotta be kidding me. That's gotta be a bug. I just did this. Do you see any migrations? Where are the migrations? Test. The model. Okay, sure. I don't care. Yes. DB migrate. Create walkers. DB migrate. Okay. All right. What's happening? DB migrate. Okay, cool. They just magically appeared. Sweet. Thanks, VS Code and Rails. You did really teamed up on this one. All right, so we got create walkers, create walks, create walkers, create. Okay, that looks good. So we have our owners, our dogs, our blacklist, our walkers, and our walks. I think that's everything we need. So let's go ahead and migrate. And if something's wrong, we can just delete the database and fix it later. So Rails DB migrate. Oh yeah, and while that's working, let's go ahead and get our cores all set up, right? So we're going to be making requests across different web pages. So let's get our rack cores up. All right, really, this has got to be a joke. All right, so while we're doing that, we'll belongs to. Okay, so we got a belongs to somewhere. That's the worst thing ever. All right, where's our belongs to? Probably one of the files that magically disappeared. Belongs. There we go. Belongs to. Let's try that again. Rails DB migrate. Again, going back to our gem file. We uncommented React core, so we need to bundle install that, and then we'll see. We'll be checking our cores RB. I'll just do this now. I'm going to go ahead and do this. change this to a star. Okay, good. We successfully migrated. I'm going to bundle install our rack cores and change our origin to a star. All right, resource star, headers, any methods, perfect. And I'm going to add one more thing here, expose authorization. And the reason we're going to do that is because we're going to have in our headers, we're going to have an authorization header, which holds our JSON web token. And if we don't expose it, theoretically, we won't be able to get it with fetch. Now, I was getting it with fetch before I exposed, but all the docs I read said to expose it, or else you won't be able to get it with fetch. So we're just going to do it. That's what the docs say. But yeah, anyway, cool. Sweet. So we've bundled installed. And one thing we're going to have to do that I don't want to like get the error and then, well, what's happening is we're going to notice that our config routes says that we need a home controller. So I'll just go ahead and touch that real quick. It's not really going to do anything. We can remove it later. But just for the sake of getting up and running, home controller.rb app controllers. Home controller. Wow, it's actually showing stuff up now. So I'll say class home controller inherits from application controller. All right, and it's going to def index, and because that's in the, if you look at the routes, which isn't here anymore, it's probably somewhere or whatever. But we pushed the route to index, so we're going to say render JSON message welcome home. All right, so one thing I'm not going to do is use a serializer for this. You probably should if you have data that you want to be more complex, but we're not going to get too complex today. I say today, but really this won't be done for a few days. But so we're not going to use one. You can use Rails API, but one thing that they have like weird structure, which I don't really like. It's very unintuitive, cause extra work, so I'm not going to use it today. Anyway, moving on. All right, so we have this. Sweet. And let's go ahead and set up our routes for what we want, at least what we think we want right now. So I'm going to go to my routes. All right, so we have, walkers, walkers, and dogs. We don't really ever want to go to walks just by itself. So I'm going to say we want to go get a walkers walks, right? And we probably want to get a dog's walks. All right. All right, and we probably want to get our owners dogs. I'm gonna do that. My headphones just conked out on me. I know you can hear me, but I'm not getting my feedback and it sounds weird. So give me 1 second. Test, test. Nope. Hello, hello. Still not there. All right, we're just gonna deal with it. All right, so let's see. Yeah, so we're gonna get our owner / dogs routes. We're gonna get our dogs walks routes, our walkers walks routes. I think that looks pretty good. And now what we want to do is test our database. Okay, so normally we go into Rails C and test it out. What I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, is I'm going to copy some stuff into our seeds, and we're going to test that out in Rails console. So we're going to go into seeds. All right. And I made some. So I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is going to destroy all owners and walks. I'm going to make a owner. All right. I'm going to make 2 dogs. I'm going to make a walker. And then I'm going to make 2 walks. So we're going to Rails DB this. All right, and we got, of course we did. We got some errors here. So let's see what's going on here. A defined method resources for main object. Did you mean rescue? And that's going to be in routes.rb line 28. I also didn't save my seed, so. All right, line 28, resources. And I put it outside of the end, and that's why I'm an idiot, and I thought that end went with the device 4, but I did not. And let's go ahead and put these over here. All right, that looks much better, at least a little bit better. Let's knock it out 1. There you go, that looks good. All right, Rails DB seed. Oh my goodness. All right, what else we got? Unknown attribute dog for walk. Okay, because I didn't do anything with my models. All right, let's go to the models and let's set these up, right? So we have our owner. Our owner is going to has many dogs, okay? Um, our walk is going to belongs to walker, and because we said belong to, we didn't get the other one, so we're going to say belongs to dog. And that's going to be good. And then our walker has many walks. And we're going to say dependent destroy here. I think I spelled that right. Give me 1 second. I'm not just checking the spelling, I'm checking something else too. So chill. All right, so let's see here. Yes, that looks good. And then I'm gonna also so what this does, right? It has many walks, dependent destroy. What that does is it says, hey, so a walker's gonna have many walks, but if you ever delete the walker, delete his walks too. I don't want all these walks out there that don't correlate to a walker. But it's also gonna have as many dogs through walks. Okay. And then lastly, our dogs belongs to an owner. That's good. And it's gonna has many walks, and that's also gonna be dependent destroy. So if the dog goes away and destroy, if the dog goes away, we're not going to keep the walk either. Because why? It doesn't make any sense. You walked an undefined dog, right? And then has many walkers through walks. Oh my goodness. All right, cool. Sweet. All right, so now we're all set up. Now our Rails DB seed should work just fine. And it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. We get to do some more troubleshooting, which is always just blast. Foreign key constraint failed. Belongs to owner. Has many walks, dependent destroy. So what foreign key is wrong? Let's check our schema. Actually, before we check anything, I'm just going to literally delete all of these open tabs. All right, sweet. So let's open up our schema. Got a lot of troubleshooting right here, right? This is all planned. It's all planned, guys. All of it. All right, so we're going to go to our schema. And foreign key constraint failed. Let's see if it gives us any more information about where it failed. A lot of information, very little useful information. Here we go. Nope. It's in the statement. Oh, cool. Thanks. It's in the statement, guys. That's good to know. So, but at least we know that we need to be looking at, all right, so we need to be looking at anything with foreign keys. So owner ID, that's fine. Our dogs belong to the owner. Shouldn't be anything in there. Walkers don't belong to anything. Walks have a dog ID and a walker ID. That looks perfect. That probably should be null false as well. Oh, I can't. What am I doing? I can't do that. You can't just change the schema.rb file. But whatever. That's not that big of a deal. I guess if I wanted to be really anal about it, I could go into this. It would be belongs to dog, belongs to walker. Yeah, it'd be all this stuff, right? All right. So now again, just as a little show and tell, right? So if you ever want to change your migrations, just delete your database, delete your schema, and rerun Rails DB migrate. Now I realize that this is kind of a moot point because I still have something wrong in there, obviously. All right, so again, looking at our schema, dogs looks fine, owner ID, owners doesn't need anything, walks has the 2 IDs. So I foreign key dogs, owners, walks, dogs, walks, walkers. Let's see what happens if I do it again. Rails DB seed. Let's look at my seeds file, see if anything pops out to me. All right, that time it worked. Cool, awesome, sweet. Anyway, so we're all set up. So now I want to go into Rails. Oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to go into Rails C, and I want to test out everything we just did. So I'll say Micah equals owner.first, owner.first. There's Micah. I'll say G equals dog.first. I'll say G.owner. Make sure I get Micah. Okay, I'll say G.walks. There's a walk there. G.walkers. There we go, got a walker, and I'll say A equals walker.first, A.walks. Walks are there, A.dogs. All right, looks like all my, and lastly, I'll say, did I already say G.owner? Oh, I said Micah.dogs. All right, cool. It looks like everything works great. Okay, so there's my Rails C testing. My database is set up. Now, what I want to make sure it's working is the actual JSON Web Token stuff that we've been working on for an hour and 12 minutes, 11 and a half minutes to be accurate. So, let's see. Before we do that, actually, no, not before we do that. What we're going to do, yeah, okay. So what we're going to do is, unfortunately, I didn't think this through and I can't copy it over because it's on my other computer, but we're actually going to make some spec files. And what I'm going to do is actually, no, it'll take too long to make a repo and push it up and pull it back down. So I might just email it to myself while I'm talking to you guys. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. All right, cool. So I'm going to go into my spec file. I don't know if I can email. I'll have to email plain text, unfortunately, because I don't think I can email a Ruby file because they're going to think it's some sort of security hazard, right? So let's talk about can because this is the point where I was like, should we be using can? Should we not? Oh yeah, so it's a good authorization gem, but we don't need it here. Actually, you know what? Instead of emailing that over for now, let's go ahead and actually set up some authorization, and then we'll make some tests to test that authorization. Once we make the tests, we'll do a very small amount of setting up our other controllers, but from there, it's pretty much just making a Rails app. So once we got our authorization good to go, we do some test fetches in the browser. We're kind of ready to go. So let's do that real quick. So we're going to go into our application controller. All right, and we're going to say, all right, so what I want to do is I want to make some more methods for rendering some stuff. All right, so I'm going to say unauthorized error. So basically, if I ever get, if anybody ever tries to get something not authorized to see, I want to do the following. All right, I want to render JSON. I want to say message. You are not authorized to make that request. All right. I'm going to say status 401, which is the unauthorized status. Now, what I cannot do is actually, you know what? We'll get to that in a second. I'm going to say def not found. All right. I'm going to say render JSON message resource not found. This one's going to have a status 404. All right. So these are the two things I want to. These are the two things I want to do if I either cannot find something or I have an unauthorized request. Now, what I can't do is just call these in my, well, I can call these in my actions in my controllers and do like these nested ifs. That's a real pain in the butt. So that is one option. But what I cannot do is make something like, here, I'll show you what I can't do. I can't do this. I can't say def authorize owner resource, taking a resource, and then I can't now say unauthorized error if resource.owner does not equal current owner, which is given to me by Devise, by the way. So current owner is like current user that you'd write yourself, except Devise gives it to me for my current owner. And then, so basically I'm saying if I pass in a resource like a dog, for example, and I'll say if the dog owner does not equal current owner, I don't want you to be able to do anything to it, right? Like patch it or whatever, so, or delete it. So what I can't do is just call unauthorized error, because if I call that, which renders this JSON, and then I try to render some other JSON later, Rails is going to be like, hey, you can't render two different things. So what I want to do instead is I want to throw exceptions, because if I throw an exception, it just breaks out entirely from my controller action, and I don't have to worry about that render that's at the bottom of my controller, because if I throw an exception, then I'm actually going to then I'm actually going to break out of whatever action I was in, and then I can jump right to this, and this can be the only render I call. So instead of calling this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say raise authorization error dot new if the resources owner does not equal current owner. All right. So now I'm saying, okay, I want to raise an authorization error if they're not right. And now what I have to do is tell Rails, hey, if you see these authorization errors, I want you to handle an authorization error with unauthorized error here. And then I want you to handle any sort of active record error with the record not found. I want you to handle that with this not found method. So anything that gets thrown in any of my controllers that's not in that other begin rescue I already made, because that will handle that one, I'm going to say rescue from active record not found. So this is going to be thrown if I say like owner.find params, or actually let's do dog. So if I say like dog.find params ID, right? What's going to happen is if the params is like something that doesn't exist, because I said .find and not find by, remember find by returns nil if it can't find it. Find throws an error, and that error is this active record not found error. So I'm going to say if that ever gets thrown in my application, I'll make sure to use .find so it will get thrown. I'm going to rescue that with unauthorized error, which is right down here. So now if ever I can't find something, I'm going to render this JSON with a status code of 401, and the fetch request will return this instead of the actual resource. So I'm going to say that, and then I'm also going to say rescue from authorization error with unauthorized error. So now if I throw an authorization error, which I throw right here, I'm going to rescue it with unauthorized error. Now, the only problem is that authorization error doesn't exist. I just made it up, right? So now what I have to do is actually create it. So I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to make dir app errors, and I'm going to touch app errors authorization error.rb. All right. So instead of my errors, I have this new authorization error. I'm just going to say class authorization error. I'm just going to inherit from standard error. And that's it. Cool. Now authorization error exists. Now I can throw it. Sweet. Awesome. Great job, team. Cool. So now before we move on and start setting up our dogs controller, I really want to get some specs set up. Now, unfortunately, I didn't specify that I wanted to use our spec in the beginning. So I have this test thing, which is not our spec. So what I'm going to do is say set up our spec with Rails. All right, so I'm like, okay, let's find the actual here, our spec Rails, GitHub. That looks good. Our spec Rails, okay. So I'm gonna add that gem. So I'm gonna go over to my gem file. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna do it right here, gem, our spec Rails, and I'm gonna say groups, development, and test, just like the other ones. Bundle install. All right, and then it looks like after I do bundle install, I say Rails generate rspec install, and that'll make some nice files for me. So I'll copy that in there. Cool, spec, perfect. Now I can do stuff. All right, sweet, cool. Thank you, documentation. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to start making some specs. All right, oh, I have the specs here, so I can copy and paste. This is just amazing. All right, cool. So the first spec I'm going to make is actually I'm going to test. Now I'm going to test my JSON web token stuff because it's really complicated. It's hard to test in the browser. We will test in the browser in a second, but it's hard to test in the browser, and it's something that I really want to be able to reliably test without going into the browser and doing a bunch of fetch requests. So I'm going to do some copy and pasting here because it's going to take a while it would take a while to type out, but we're going to talk about everything, so don't worry about that. So we're going to say, okay, so let's go ahead and say touch spec / authentication spec.rb and touch spec / what do we want to call it? We want to call it sign up spec. All right, sweet. So we made these two specs. All right, let me just exit out of everything else. All right, so we know that our backend works in terms of like our models. We tested that in Rails console. We seeded everything, but what we want to make sure actually works is our sign up. So I'm gonna first paste in the sign up spec. Now, this is something that he goes over, but he's all messed up. And so he uses methods that doesn't exist, like decoded JWT token from response is not a real thing unless it's some gem he doesn't talk about. So that doesn't exist. Also, he doesn't really test the right thing. Like his specs all pass when you're not even getting a JSON Web Token back from signing in. So if you look at his registration, right, he never tests to see if you get a JSON Web Token back. He just like, okay, if a user already exists, do you get a 400? Okay, yeah, cool. But that I don't care about that if I'm not getting back like a 200. He only tests for 200 coming back. He never tests for. Oh, also match schema isn't a thing. So yeah, so it's all messed up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you my specs, and we're going to talk about what actually works. We're going to do authentication spec first. No, we're not. We're going to do sign up spec first because it's shorter. All right, and I highly doubt this is going to pass in the first try, but you know, whatever. So we're going to go into sign up spec. We're going to paste it in. We're going to take a look at what's going on here. So the first thing we have obviously is require Rails helper, always necessary. Our spec describe, we're going to describe a sign up post request. So we're going to set some arguments here. So we're going to have an owner with an email and password, URL/sign up. And we're going to say when a user is unauthenticated, we want to make sure that we get a 200 request back when we post. Remember, we're signing up. So we're going to post to /sign up the owner params. So basically this is creating a new owner. We want to make sure we get a 200 response back. So in order to make this part work, I would have had to use this match schema thing that doesn't exist. So I'd have to like install a new gem that is not even match schema. It's like something else, and it's just a pain in the butt. So what I'm actually going to do is just put response.body and make sure it looks like a user. Not great practice, but it's we're going to cut a little bit of corners here. So we'll see that in a second. Now, if a user already exists, all right, so, okay, unfortunately, there's this other gem that we have to use called Fabricate. And Fabricate makes me able to make fake things in my database for my tests. So let me go ahead and get that up and running. So I'm going to open up my gem file. And, okay, just for the sake of being gem fabrication. All right, there's fabrication. Rails, that's not right. Fabrication gem, there we go. Cool, so fabrication gem's like, okay, this is how I work. I'm going to go to the gem file and I'm going to, once I load up, and you can actually see what's going on. All right, so getting started, gem fabrication, cool. I'm gonna put it in my groups of development and test, and I need to make sure I'm not an idiot. All right, cool, done, groups, development and test. Getting lazy here because it is almost it's almost 1:30. It's not that late, I guess. All right, and also one thing I'm gonna need too is I'm gonna do some faker stuff. So I'm gonna say gem faker. You guys have seen this before. So I'm not gonna go over it, but groups, again, development and test. Cool. All right, so again, I get that. We're gonna bundle install. Now, what we do have to do though, if you read here, is like, okay, so defining fabricators. So you do this in if you have this person model, you want to go to spec fabricators, person fabricator.rb, and you make a person like this. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to say touch or make dir spec fabricators, and then touch spec fabricators dog fabricator.rb, and touch spec /fabricators owner fabricator.rb. And using the docs, we're going to determine how to do this. So we're going to go into fabricators, owner fabricator. We're going to say fabricator. And again, I'm looking right here for a person who belongs to a neighborhood and has many houses. This is what you would do. So I'm going to say fabricator or owner, all right, has a name. And I'm going to use the faker gem for this. And I'm going to say he also has an email, also using the faker gem. And I'm going to say he has a password, also using the faker. And his password, for some reason, is always going to be a Pokemon name. Don't know why. It's just a weirdo, I guess. And his address is going to be a faker address.street address. All right, cool. Last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add some dogs. Count to two random dogs, and our dog fabricator, we're gonna go ahead and make that 2. Fabricator dog do. Now, one weird thing is if I link the dog to the owner, it makes an infinite loop back and forth, which I think is kind of silly, but I guess that's just how it works. So I'm gonna say faker name. Dogs are gonna have human names. We're just gonna have to deal with it. Walk time is going to be a random number. So I'm gonna say random.new.rand. It's gonna be between 0 and 60, actually 1 and 61. Oh no, 0 and 60. All right, cool. Random number between 0 and 60. And then notes, I'm not gonna use faker. I'm just gonna do an empty string for notes. Cool. So there's our fabricators. Here's the documentation for that. I'm doing a lot of extra gems here, I know, but this is kind of real dev, guys. So something you should be able to do. Not fun always, but it's a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day once those tests start passing. So we have our sign up spec, right? So anyway, going back to what we're doing, we're fabricating an owner before everything, and we're signing up that owner with the URL and params. Remember, params is going to be these things. Yeah. So we're gonna make an owner with these fake. So we're making the email of the owner user@example.com in this case, and then the password's gonna be password. So it's gonna make a fake owner. We're gonna pass in that those params, and we're gonna post to /login or sorry sign up, and then we're gonna expect now to get a 400 for this one because we fabricated the owner before we posted. So if an owner already exists with that email, we want a 400 to come back. All right. If the owner doesn't exist, obviously we want that 200. And now what they don't test for, which I do, I believe I should. Do I not? Definitely want to test to make sure we get a JSON web token back. So I don't test for that. We should test for that. So let's see what I got here. When a new user authenticated, expect response returns a new user. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say it returns a JSON web token. Right. So what we want to say is we want to expect response dot headers dot author, or let's do authorization, I believe. Let's see. I think that's right. I don't have this one written for some reason. I thought I did, but I guess I don't. All right, so we're gonna say we want authorization to be present. So we want a not nil value for our authorization. So we want a JWT. And just for safe measures, I'm gonna puts out response dot headers authorization. Cool. Sweet. So let's just see what happens when we run our spec. Don't have really high hopes for this, but let's see what we get. So we're gonna have 2 responses put out. We're gonna see a new user and hopefully a JSON web token, but we also might just get a bunch of errors and not see anything. And we're failing everything so far. Cool. 5 examples, 5 failures. So let's see what we got here. All right. Routing error. Registry. See, okay, this is what I'm talking about with spelling errors. So apparently we have a discrepancy. We have registrations and registration controller. So it looks like I said registration. Oh no, registration. Okay, so this should say registrations controller. All right, registrations. All right, cool. All right, it looks like that's all the same error. So let's run our spec again. All right, no, it looks like more than one thing. Probably. All right, sign up when a user is on the internet. Super. Okay, well that's weird. Unknown format. All right, let's check that out. Sessions controller, devise sessions controller. Oh wait, no, that wasn't it. Registrations controller. So unless action controller unknown format. Okay. Let's see if I can get anything better. All the same thing. See if we have any other information. Middleware responders. Action controller unknown format. All right, well, let's see what let's see what this says here. Something I didn't run into before. It's probably something small, but you know, whatever. All right, unknown format. Oh, is it? Oh, it's because I don't think I have a. Hold on. Format. Respond to JSON. See if I take this out. Okay, so I don't want to say respond to JSON apparently in the application controller. Let's see if that is what. So yeah, okay, so so I guess the docs did us dirty on that one. Don't know why, but can't have it in the application controller. Now, if I hadn't known that I hadn't done that previously and it worked, I guess the only clue I would have had is it's a format issue. So I would have started messing with any formatting stuff. That might have been something I tried. That would have been a tough one to figure out, but we figured it out, so that's good. I called something Fasker. All right, so let's see where I did that. That's going to be in. God, so many spelling errors. It's really the worst thing ever. All right. It looks like it's in a fabricator. So let's take a look at my fabricators. And guys, too, this is the first time I've used fabricators. First time I've used Devise. So it's definitely possible to. Here we go. It's definitely possible to do this stuff. You just gotta take a deep breath and just be able to work through the docs. And it's all right, cool. So all right, this is awesome. So I passed all the tests in my signup spec, right? So again, just to clarify what we just made sure works. When we sign up with a new user, we get a 200 response. Okay, we get back. All right, so we don't get back a response body, but I don't really care about that because I don't. All I want when I get back is a JSON web token. So I get back this bearer with this big ass JSON web token, which is exactly what I want. So that's really all I care about. The fact that response.body doesn't seem to be popping up anything doesn't really bother me because I don't need to know like my user ID when I go in. I just need to know that the server can correspond me to a user with my JSON web token. So I don't really care about this spec at all. So I'm literally just going to comment it out because it's silly. So we verified that we get a 200 back. When we sign up, we get a JSON web token. And we've when we try to sign up with somebody that already exists, we get a 400 error and we don't make somebody. So if I did Rails C right now, actually no, we won't get anything because it's a different database. We'll see that with our fetch request, which we're going to do momentarily, and we're going to do a hard stop at 1:45, so I can get a solid 5 hours in before I got to wake up and give you guys one-on-ones and stuff. All right, cool. So where was I? Yes. Okay. So so we've made sure that the sign up pretty much works exactly what we wanted it to do. So now we want to make sure that our login works well. And that's going to be in our authentication spec. So I'm going to copy that over and we're going to look through that. Authentication spec. All right, cool. So our authentication spec, let's just look at what we're testing. So we're going to make a user with Fabricate. Now, one thing that's really important to note that kind of stumped me for a little bit is that, oh my goodness, and I lost my feedback again. Give me 1 sec. Testing. There we go. Okay. So one thing that stumped me for a bit is that this is lazily made. So just because you say let user fabricate owner doesn't mean that you're actually fabricating anything until you actually call the user. It's a pain in the butt, but we made it work. So let's look through what we're doing here. So we're saying, okay, so we're going to make a user that fabricates an owner. We're going to make our URL login. We're going to make our params this user's email and password, so they correspond to a user that exists, right? So we're testing login, right? So the user has to exist. All right, so we're saying, okay, when the params are correct, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, before we do any of these, we're going to post to /login with our params for a user that exists, okay? So that's going to make sure that we're signing in pretty much. So we're making sure we're signed in, we're getting a 200 response back. We're making sure that when we sign in, we get a JSON web token back, okay? We're going to make sure that it's a valid JSON web token. And we're going to, and don't worry about this too much. Basically, you're just getting the token, you're decoding it using the secret key that we set up in our environment variables. And we're making sure that, that this sub is present. Don't worry about that. Okay. Anyway, so, but we are decoding it. We're making sure it's valid. When we do a invalid login, we want to make sure that we return a 401. All right, so I'm going to post to login without my params. So I want to make sure I get a 401 unauthorized, right? I want to make sure that my logout works. So now that this is where his specs suck, right? Actually, they all kind of suck, but specifically this one. For his logout, he just tests that like, here, where are we? Registration, no, this one. Yeah, for the logout, it's like, okay, so make sure that when you log out, you get a 204, which is like, okay, cool, you're logged out, but you're not going to get any information. Yeah, that's fine. But what I want to make sure happens is when I log out, my JSON Web Token gets blacklisted, so I can't log back in, right? So cool, we're going to log out and make sure that works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to fabricate an owner. I'm going to get a login. And I'm going to get a, okay, so this is going to fail because I haven't done this yet. But basically what I'm going to do is say, okay, there's going to be some protected URL that I can only get if I'm logged in. In this case, we're using /dogs. So let me, after we look at this, we'll set up our dogs controller real quick and then use these tests and then go through our dog specs. And then we're going to call the video for tonight and not do any more. But again, from there, it's just building a Rails app. All right, so we're saying, okay, cool. So what's going to happen? Why did my phone restart? Okay, cool. Anyway, what's going to happen here is that I'm going to try to get a protected URL without sending my authorization, my JSON Web Token with it, okay? And then I'm going to say, okay, expect the response to be a 401 because I'm trying to get a protected URL, something that requires me to be logged in. I'm trying to get that without sending an authorization header. And the authorization header will make more sense when you see me do fetch requests in the browser in a second. So just bear with me here. Just know that we have an authorization header that looks, the value of the authorization header is bearer and then this JSON Web Token, okay? That's how I authenticate myself now instead of with cookies. So I'm saying, okay, so I'm expecting my response if I try to get a protected URL without being logged in to be a 401, not authorized. So that's good. And then I'm going to log in and I'm going to save my token, right? As I'm going to get my response headers. I'm going to look at the authorization header. I'm going to split by a space because the bearer, it doesn't matter. It's just bearer and then the token. I don't know why it does that. It's just convention. And then I'm going to get the actual token. And then I'm going to expect that token to be present because I had logged in. So that's good. And then I'm going to try to go to that same protected URL, but I'm going to include in my headers this authorization token. All right. And then I'm going to, I'm just putting out the status just so I can see it. But I'm expecting, I don't know why I'm doing that because I don't really have to. I'm expecting the status to be 200. So it's a successful thing. And then, so that means that I have successfully seen this protected thing, right? And if I wanted, actually, I could say puts response.body if you just want to kind of see what that would look like. So I'll comment that, put that in there. And then I'm expecting it to have a 200, like I just said. And then I'm going to sign out. I'm going to do a delete request to URL, which is my URL, which is my, where do I define it? I define it down here. Okay, I redefine URL as log out there. So now I'm doing a delete request to log out. So I'm logging out and I'm adding my, I'm actually adding my JSON Web Token in my logout. So now I'm expecting that JSON Web Token to be blacklisted. And then I'm trying to get that protected URL again with the same token that I just logged out in. And now I'm expecting to have a 401, right? So that's going to be my proper logout, is that I can't reuse a JSON Web Token that has been logged out, right? So that's a good test. This is a bad test. This is really, you can't even really call it a test. This is just words on a page. This actually tests what's going on here. So to make this test work, I have to first set up my dogs controller so I can test a protected route. So real quick, let's do that super fast. So to my dogs controller, before action. So before everything, I don't want to be able to do anything. I'm not authenticated. All right. And now let's go ahead and just do this whole thing right. So I'm gonna say def index. Here's gonna be my protected route of /dogs. We're gonna say dogs equals current owner. Again, given to me by, current owner is given to me by devise, as is authenticate owner. Both of those are devise methods that are given to me, so I don't have to write them. I'm going to say dogs equals current owner.dogs. And I'm going to say render JSON dogs. But I don't want to just do that. Actually, I want to go ahead and say, I'm going to say render JSON dogs dot to JSON, and I want to include walks. And that's actually not going to be in my fakers data, but I'll get that in my real data when I test it in the browser. And one thing I didn't do is test this all before I set up the thing, but if I actually went, actually, let's actually see what happens real quick. I'm going to open up my Rails server. Please don't break on me. And we'll see what happens when I try to get /dogs. And then I'll do it without the authenticate. Localhost 3000. Can't be reached. Yep, because it is taking forever to start up a simple Rails server. There we go. All right, sweet. Cool, welcome home. Remember setting that up in our home controller. We're gonna go to /dogs and we should see something that's like, you can't be here. Okay, that's not good. Authenticate is spelled wrong, of course. It wouldn't be me if it wasn't spelled wrong. So we're gonna go to our network tab. We're gonna refresh. Okay, so look at that. So we did this request and we got a 401 unauthorized, right? A GET request, perfect. Because we didn't include our authentication token. Now, if I were to take this out and refresh the page, undefined method dogs for nil, because current owner is nil. What if I just change this real quick though? Say dogs. There we go. Successful request. Now, that should be dogs though. Hold on one second. Oh, I'm an idiot. It's late. Apologize. All right, dog.all, right? There we go. There we go. Here's our dogs, right? Cool. So we're actually getting that. It's working great. But now I'm saying, you know what? I want to authenticate and I don't want to get all dogs. I want to get the current owner.dogs. So now refresh the page. I can't do it. I get a 401. You need to sign up, sign in or sign up before continuing. Perfect. So Devise is doing all that for me. Now, def show, right? And now I only want to be able to see my own dog. So I'll say dog equals dog.find. No, I'm doing find, so I can throw that error if I can't find it, and I'll be handled by my appropriate thing. And I'll test that in my specs, and you'll see that. It'll be awesome. I'll say authorize owner resource dog, right? Remember, authorize owner resource was written by us in our application controller. And it's saying raise this error if the owner is not the current owner. And that error gets raised. It hits this rescue right here, and I go to unauthorized error. You're not authorized to make that request. And we'll see that in the specs as well. So we'll test for a 401 and a 404, both of which will indicate that the correct thing is being rendered. All right, anyway, back to the dogs controller. All right, so we're gonna authorize owner resource dog. Now, if that's good, then I can render the resource of dog. Remember, render resource is written for us by that dude in our application controller here. And actually, I'm going to change this because I don't like the way he wrote it, and I'm better than him. So I'm only going to allow us to do more than just render that resource with JSON resource. I'm going to say render resource. I'm going to say with. It's going to default to nil. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to render JSON resource, but include with. So if I want to render it with something, I can include that thing. So if I go back to my dogs controller, I can render resource dog, but I can now specify with walks. And I think that's way better. Cool. So hopefully I don't get errors with this, but we'll fix them if we do. All right, cool. So we're going to say then create and now this one definitely needs to be verified. Dog equals dog.new. And hopefully now you're seeing, remember how in like Sinatra, I was like, make sure you protect your create routes and your update routes because people can send requests to them. Now we're seeing that we don't even have a new and edit. So just not showing a form obviously doesn't do anything. People are only going to be making requests like this. So we clearly need to protect these. So hopefully that makes more sense now. So dog.owner is going to equal current owner. So if I'm creating a dog, I'll put in my dog params. I'll make those dog params down here. Dog params, all right? And it'll be just params dot require dog dot permit name walk time notes breed. All right, cool. Got my strong params. All right, so I'm going to say make a new dog. Put with the dog params, owner is going to be the current owner and dog dot save, and then I'm going to render resource of the dog. Now remember, render resource checks to see if there are errors. If there are errors, it will put this validation error, right? So if errors are empty, it's going to render the actual dogs, which will be nil, include if you don't put anything there, and otherwise it will render this validation error, right? So I don't need to do if safe because I'm testing the safe basically in this render resource by checking if there are errors there. So we're good to go with that. And now, so we've created, let's say def update, all right? We're going to say dog equals dog.find. Again, find, not find by, so I can get that sweet error and render my perfect thing if I want to. Authorize owner resource, pass in the dog. I will throw an error if that's not my dog, and then I'm say dog.update, dog params if it is my dog, and then render resource dog. If there are any errors, that will be handled by the render resource. So these are pretty clean controller actions. I actually really like them. Destroy, all right. And we're going to say dog equals dog.find, params ID, authorize owner resource dog. Again, if it's not my dog, I can't destroy it. We'll throw an error at that point and render a 401. If it is ours, I'll dog.destroy it, and then render resource. We'll go ahead and render that dog that was destroyed. Clearly won't have errors because we just deleted it. So no error is going to be thrown there, but the error will be thrown here if it's not my dog, thus never doing these things because it will throw an error and said go right to that render for the 401. And we'll test all that in our specs. All right, cool. So we have our dog controller, which is great. That's something we touch as a fetch now later. But right now, what we're going to use it is the fact that def index, which is the RESTful route. Don't forget your RESTful routes. Remember to /dogs. So /dogs then needs to make sure that that the user is logged in. So we're going to use that in our tests now. So going back to our specs that we pasted in. All right. For our where were we? All right. So yeah, again, so our protected URL was to /dogs because we're testing to make sure. We're testing authenticate owner before everything. And we're saying, okay, so if I try to get it without authorization, I'm going to get a 401. If I then log in, save my token, and include that token as an authorization bearer with the token, in my protected, and I request that protected URL again, I will get a 200 response, which is a success response. Then if I log out and try to get it again with my old token, I'm going to get a 401, not validated or whatever, right? So this isn't working, so I'm going to open up a new one. There we go. And I'm going to say our spec. And see if we have login, sign up functionality, and log out functionality. No examples found because I am not in the right thing. I need to CD into the actual project. So I'll say CD into JS Rails. Is that what it's called? What did I call this thing? Dog walker. Dog walker. Walker backend. Our spec. And I'm expecting errors for this one. Oh my goodness, no errors. Look at that. Whew. All right, cool. And when we did, all right, sweet. So everything we just talked about works. So our sign in, sign up, log out, all works, which is freaking sweet. Whew. Hour and 49 minutes later. All right, so hard stop. Change my hard stop to 2, I guess, because I want to get a little bit more done. All right, so the puts we see our response.body here when we went to get the dogs. Here, Galen Carroll with a walk time. We know it's a dog, even though the silly name that's not a dog name. We see our walk time is 55. So this is a dog, and we are seeing 2 dogs here, a dog with an ID of 1 and an ID of 2, because we in our fabricator we said that the fabricator we said that our owner should have 2 dogs. So we're seeing those 2 dogs when I make that request, and then when I log back out, because I'm passing all the tests, I know I'm getting a 401 there. So that's freaking awesome. So what I want to do now is I want to put specs in for the actual dog, and then we're going to do some fetch requests, and then we're going to call it. Okay, so super fast. I'm sure you guys have paused and restarted this a few times. You're not doing it all in one go anyway, so you're fine. All right. So dog specs. All right, sweet. All right, so we're going to go into our spec. I didn't make a dog spec, so I'll say touch. spec dog spec.rb. So what we're going to do, we're going to make two owners. Okay, remember these are lazily made, so I have to make sure I'm calling them both if I want to get both of them. And remember, I don't get the dogs till I make the owners, right? So I want to log in with both of them with the params of the owner email and owner 2 email. So I have params and params 2, one for owner 2, right? So I'm going to say the first thing, I want to make sure I don't get unauthorized requests to the dogs controller. So I'm testing every single RESTful route. I get to dogs, I get to a specific dog, I post to dogs, I patch to dogs, I delete to dogs. I'm expecting a 401 for every single one of those because I have my before action in my dogs controller of everything has to be authenticated. Perfect. And then I'm going to want to test some authorization, right? So authenticated owners can only create, update their own resources. So I'm going to let dogs URL be /dogs. I'm going to log in to, but now I don't know if this is what you're supposed to do for this. Like I've never really seen instance variables be used in specs, but it's the only way I can make it work without like spending too much time on it. So that's what we're doing here. And because I'm in my before do, and to get that variable to my its, that's all I could figure out how to do because it wouldn't let me do a let here. And I couldn't do the let out there because I want to do this every time. Anyway, not important. So I'm posting to login. So I'm logging in owner and owner 2, and I'm saving their tokens as token and token 2, or at token and at token 2. So the first thing I'm testing, and I'm saying, okay, I want to see if I try to go to dog/1000, I get a 404 not found, right? So the flow for that would be a show. I use a .find, which will throw an error if it can't find it. So it won't find a dog with a ID of 100 or 1,000 or whatever I said. It's then going to go over to my, it's going to say, okay, authorize owner resource. That's defined in my application controller. So authorize owner resource is going to say, okay, I'm going to raise an authorization error, which is defined in my errors authorization error right here in this file. I'm going to raise this error if the owner, oh, I'm describing the entirely wrong thing. So I'm going to go right here, say dog.find params ID. That's going to throw the error in my dog.find. So I'm not going to do anything else. That error gets thrown right here. I stop. I don't do anything else. My application controller says, oh, look, an active record not found has been propagated up the stack. So instead of throwing an error and breaking my application, I want to rescue from that error with unauthorized error. So I am rendering this. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's weird. Really, I should be active record not found with not found. Hold up, before I fix that, let me see something real quick because that should have failed the spec. I'm almost spent too much time on this, but let's just see what's going on here. Oh, I didn't run the spec. All right, so that will fail. That will fail the spec, right? Because I will get a 4. We're going to see right now that I will get a 401 instead of a 404, because just to make sure you guys are following that. Hopefully, I'm not going too fast, right? So basically, I'm expecting a 404. I'm expecting a 404. Oops. Oh, that was bad. All right, good. All right, so in my dog spec, I'm in my authentication spec. Sorry, my dog spec, I'm saying, okay, I'm expecting a 404 if I try to get dogs with an ID of 1,000. But let's look at what actually happens here. So my dogs controller, oh man, I got a lot of errors. All right, so let's fix these errors and then see the actual error and walk through the stack there. Oh wait, no, this one, okay, good. This one's the actual error. So get dogs authenticated owners can only create, update their own resources. Returns a 404 for unfound dogs. So I'm expecting a, Jesus. Okay, so I'm expecting a 404, but I got a 401. So let's figure out why that happened. It happened because in my dogs controller, right, I said dog.find. I tried to find a dog with an ID of 1,000. Doesn't exist, right? So I go to my, I throw an error at that point, an active record not found error. My application controller says, oh, there it is. I'm supposed to rescue this, but I accidentally said rescue with an unauthorized error. Unauthorized error renders a 401. So that's why I'm getting that 401 there. But the good news is that I'm rescuing it with the right thing, or I'm rescuing it and that works properly. I just needed to change this to not found. All right, cool. So I want to change that to not found. I'm going to get that 404. We're going to see our failures go from 5 to 4 at this point. And then we'll troubleshoot why the rest are failing. In a second. And then we're going to do some fetch requests, and then we're going to call it before 2 hours. Before 2 hours. 5 minutes. Come on. Oh, did I just not scroll down? It's embarrassing. All right, so 4 failures instead of 5, like we said. and we're not seeing that number one is no longer the 401 to the 404. So we've successfully rendered this not found. We changed it to a 404, good to go. So again, the flow path, just real quick, flow path, dog.find, no dog of 1,000, throw an error, active record throws an error. So that error property gets up, stops the app, stops running in show, jumps out of show. My application controller says, oh, look, error that I'm supposed to rescue from. I'm supposed to rescue an active record not found with a not found. So I stop the error and I say, instead, I'm going to render JSON with the status of 404. Tested it, works great. We're going to say authorize owner resource, undefined method, authorize owner resource, authorize owner resource. Did you mean authorize? Okay, cool. I did not mean authorize. Authorize. Let's test it now. The spelling, it's just every single time. That's not a spelling, that's a typo. I do not think that I spell authorize, just for the record. Record straight. All right, sweet, everything works. So let's just talk through real quick what we just proved worked, and then we'll do some fetch requests. All right, cool. So we've proven that we get a 404 if there are no dogs that with that ID. Perfect. It proves that we can allow an owner to view only their own dogs. So if I, okay, so this is important. So let's walk through this, right? So I'm going to get dogs URL and I'm passing in token. So I'm basically saying, all right, I want to get all dogs, and I'm expecting that I get 2 dogs because every owner should have 2. And I'm expecting that the owner ID for both of them are equal to 1. So that's good. So I'm getting only my dogs there. I'm getting only 2 dogs, and they're both owner ID of 1, and the owner that I passed in was the owner 1, right? So it's going to have an ID of 1. Same thing for this guy. I authorize with token 2, right? So the login from the second guy, I'm getting 2 dogs instead of the 4 that exist, and I'm making sure that the owner ID of them is 2, so they're only my dogs, right? Perfect. Then I'm going to say I want to stop an owner from updating a dog that is not theirs. So right now I use user 1 or owner 1's token to try to patch to dog/3. So user 1 owns dogs 1 and 2. User 2 owns dogs 3 and 4. So this dog does not belong to them. I'm expecting a 401 response, which I do get, right? So let's look at what happens there when I try to patch to them, right? Here's my update. I find the dog, that works fine. I authorize owner resource. So I go to my application controller. I authorize owner resource. I pass in the dog. The dog's owner does not equal current owner. So I raise authorization error.new. That propagates out of here. I don't even continue with the code. I instead jump out of my authorization error. My authorization error is rescued with unauthorized error. So I come down here and I render JSON, you are not authorized to make that request with the status of 401. And I can test in my spec that I do get a 401. Perfect. Allows an owner to update their dog. So now I try to do a patch with the same token to dog/1, which I'm allowed to do. I want to change the dog's name to Bubba, and then I get the body, I parse it out, and I expect the body's name to equal Bubba, and that passed, so therefore it was a successful patch request. It did actually change it in the database, and if I went into Rails C right now, I'm sure that I would not see it because I keep forgetting it's a different freaking database. But I'll open up Rails C later, and we'll see how the fetch requests actually do change stuff. All right, it prevents someone from viewing a dog which is not theirs. And I try to get dog 1 with user 2 or owner 2, and they don't own it, so I get a 401 back, and all of these are passing. Therefore, all the functionality I want exists. So let's do this. Let's go to google.com and do some fetch requests. All right. Last thing I'm going to do. All right, so I'm going to try to sign up or sign in, right? So to sign in, I need to know what users exist. I'm going to say user.all.first or owner.first, sorry. M equals owner.first. All right, so micah@shoot.com, and I'm pretty sure I made the password. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say const params equals, I'm going to say owner, email, micah@shoot.com, password. And then we're going to see if cores is working right. All right, there are my params. Now I'm going to say const res equals, actually I'll make URL first. I'm going to do this to /login. Actually, no, I can't do /login because I'm at Google. I have to say HTTP localhost 3000 /login. So I'm going across from Google to localhost. So the CORS will be in effect. So we'll successfully verify if that works. So now I'll say const res equals await fetch my URL with my params, but I need to do like actual params. So I'm going to say method is going to be a post. My headers will be, I probably don't have to do all these actually. You want to say like application JSON for content and type and everything, but we're not going to do that right now. I just want to get this in and make sure. I think it'll work without it, so we'll see. Say body, and we'll say JSON.stringify params, and then we'll close off that. That should work. Damn it. I get it unauthorized. Let's see why. Unauthorized. Well, let's check the spec and see what I'm doing differently. Sign in, authentication. User email. Nothing should give me a 401 when user params are incorrect. Oh, well, let's check my password. Let's check my seeds. Make sure I'm doing that right. All right, where are my seeds? I'm getting very tired. App, DB, seeds. Password is password. Mike@shoot.com. Owner, email. Mike@shoot.com. Password. That should work. Let's check out this. See what we got. All right. We did a post request. You got a 401 back. Email. You need to sign in before continuing. I'm going to /login. All right. We got it. Owner email. Password. Oh, one thing too to notice, you definitely need to have an HTTPS connection, right? So you're not sending this plain text, right? Cool. Request payload. All right, so the payload's there. I'm doing a owner email, user email, password, Mike@shoot.com, password, Mike@shoot.com. Let's try this. m.authenticate. I think that's right. Email, Micah@shoot.com, password. I don't know devise well enough to go off like this. Authenticate owner maybe. All right, well, this should work. So let's figure out why it's not working. And if it takes too long, we'll just call it, but it definitely should work. And it has in the past. So I know it should, and I know it will. So give me 1 second. Let's figure it out. And this is probably a good time to put me on 2x speed until I figure this out. Okay. Let's do this. Let's try it locally from localhost 3000. Let me, I don't know if I should copy this because you know, it didn't work, but let's go to localhost 3000, see if that makes a difference. All right, so we want to say const params equals owner, email, Mike@shoot.com, password, const URL equals /login. I'm at localhost now, so I'm good. Const res equals await fetch URL. Method post. You know what? Maybe I do have to do all those headers and stuff. I don't know why I didn't even think about that. Let's do that. Let's say headers, content type, application JSON. Sure. Body JSON.stringify params. I think that's all I need. That's what it was. Okay, cool. Put your headers in there. All right, so res, now I have my res. Okay, so I'll say const JSON equals res.json. Now, my JSON, oh yeah, I don't get anything back in my JSON, right? What I do get back though is res.headers.get authorization. Authorization. There it is. There's my JSON web token. Perfect. So I can say token equals, or const token equals res.headers.get authorization. All right. Now I should be able to make a request to get dogs or something like that because I have a valid header. Perfect. So let's try doing a invalid request first. So I'll say const URL2 equals /dogs, and I need to do this in Google to make sure it works, right? But for now, let's do it here. So URL2 is dogs, and I'll say const res2 equals await fetch to URL2, and I'm expecting this to fail because I don't include my headers. So I want to get a 401 here. Perfect, 401, exactly. Now I'm going to change this to res3, fetch URL2, and now I'm going to say here, headers, authorization, put in my token. There we go. Const JSON 3 equals await res3.json, and I need to get my dogs back. JSON 3. Oh, yes. And there they are. There are the two dogs. Success. Cool. All right, last thing. Make sure this works at Google and we're good to go. Okay. Anyway, and figure it out later. All right, let's copy each one over. Google. Oops. Okay, good. All right, params. URLs is going to be a little bit different. Oh, local host 3000 /login. All right, cool. And then I'm going to say, what did I do? I'll do this. Oh, that's okay, cool. All right, so that content type application JSON is important. So I don't know why I didn't try that first when I even made a whole spiel about how I thought I could get away with it. All right, const, now I'll say const token equals res.headers.get authorization. There it is. All right, so across, so even with cores, I'm able to get my JSON web token. I can make requests. You saw me do it here. I got the dogs back. I can make a patch request. I've tested those in my tests, so I know they all work. And from there, we're good to go. So that's really it. We're calling it at this point. Oh my God, I'm way over. All right, gotta go. See you guys. I'll come back to you to finish up the back end, which shouldn't take too long, and then work on the front end. Have a good one. Bye.